You think your dog is stealing from you. But sometimes, that is not what is happening at all. Sometimes your dog is not trying to be bad. Not trying to annoy you. Not trying to win. Sometimes your dog is just reaching for the closest thing that feels like you. A shirt. A pillow. A sock. A slipper. The remote you touched 5 minutes ago. The blanket that still carries your shape. And from the outside, all of it looks the same. Your dog took something. Again. So people laugh. Or they roll their eyes. Or they say the usual thing. Your dog knows exactly what it's doing. And maybe that part is true. But what most people miss is this. Knowing what it's doing does not always mean doing it for the reason you think. Because the dog sleeping on your t-shirt. The dog shredding your pillow. And the dog sprinting away with your sandwich. May all be stealing. But emotionally, psychologically, they are not in the same state at all. And once you see the difference, the whole behavior changes meaning. Not into something smaller. Into something deeper. Because hidden inside this annoying little habit is often a story about comfort, arousal, attachment, boredom, adolescence, and the strange way a dog tries to regulate its own nervous system in a human home. It starts in scenes that feel almost too ordinary to matter. You leave food on the counter for 10 seconds. You turn back. Gone. Or you walk into the bedroom and find your pillow ripped open, stuffing everywhere, like a crime scene no one intends to explain. Or maybe it is quieter than that. Maybe your old hoodie disappears from a chair. And later you find it curled up in your dog's bed. No chewing. No damage. Just claimed. And that is where doubt begins. Not just frustration. Doubt. Because when a dog keeps taking your things, it gets personal. You start wondering if your dog is defiant, disrespectful, spoiled, manipulative. Maybe you even start doubting yourself. Did I train this badly? Did I reinforce something wrong? Why does my dog ignore all its toys and go straight for the one thing I care about? Why does it always choose my stuff? And this is the point where most people flatten the whole behavior into one lazy explanation. Because dogs are naughty. But here is the deeper truth. That explanation feels satisfying. Only because it protects us from having to look closer. Because once you do look closer, the behavior becomes much harder to dismiss. A dog stealing your shirt may not be choosing mischief. It may be choosing regulation. A dog stealing the remote may not be choosing rebellion. It may be choosing interaction. A dog stealing food may not be forgetting the rules. It may be tracking what you can see, and acting differently when you cannot. That is not one behavior. That is 3 or 4 different psychological programs, wearing the same costume. Take the quiet version first. The dog that finds your worn t-shirt, carries it away, and lies on it. That behavior gets misread all the time because it looks so simple. But what looks simple from the outside can be intense inside the body. To a dog, your scent is not just information. It is regulation. It is familiarity. Safety. Prediction. Reward. Research on dogs exposed to familiar and unfamiliar scents found that the scent of a familiar human strongly activates reward-related areas of the brain. In other words, your smell is not neutral to your dog. It matters emotionally. And once you understand that, the whole scene changes. Your dog is not lying on your shirt because fabric is exciting. It is lying there because your scent does something to its body. It lowers distance. It softens uncertainty. It brings the social bond physically closer. That is why this kind of stealing often looks so still. No wild eyes. No chaotic movement. No destruction. Just contact. The dog curls around your shirt the way a tired person wraps themselves in something familiar after a hard day. And this is where it gets deeper. Sometimes the object is not the object at all. Sometimes the shirt is a substitute for proximity. A nervous system reaching for the nearest version of you it can hold. That is why these moments can feel so strangely tender once you stop reading them as disobedience. Your dog did not take laundry. Your dog found a piece of your presence and kept it close. But then there is the other kind. The louder kind. The dog that grabs the remote, freezes, and stares right at you. The dog that steals a sock and then waits. Almost like it knows the scene is about to begin. Because it does know something. Maybe not in words, but in consequences. Last time it grabbed that object, you reacted. You stood up fast. Your voice changed. Your body turned toward the dog. Your attention locked in. And from the dog's perspective, that was enormous. The object was not the prize. You were the prize. That is why some dogs do not even run immediately. They pause. Because what they are checking is not the sock. It is your face. Will you chase? Will you laugh? Will you say their name in that charged, emotional voice? Will the room suddenly become alive? And when your response is inconsistent, sometimes chasing, sometimes trading, sometimes scolding, sometimes laughing, that unpredictability can make the behavior even stronger, not weaker. Unpredictable rewards are powerful. They keep behavior alive. So the dog racing through the house with your slipper may not be declaring war. It may be doing something much more social than that. It may be saying, "Look at me. Come after me. Be in this moment with me. Let's turn this object into a game." And yes, that can be infuriating. But emotionally, it is not cold. It is often the opposite. It is an overexcited attempt to pull you into engagement. Messy. Inappropriate. Ridiculously effective. But still social. Then there is the body itself. Because some dogs do not just steal things. They need to carry things. You can feel it in the way they hold an object, deeply satisfied, almost soothed by the act of having something in their mouth. That is not random. Dogs inherit pieces of old behavioral sequences built around orienting, chasing, grabbing, carrying, tearing, consuming. Breeding changed which parts got amplified. Some dogs were shaped to hold and carry gently. Some to stalk. Some to grab and shake. So when a dog seems obsessed with carrying your shoe around the house, it may be expressing an old working tendency in a modern house with nowhere useful for that energy to go. And that matters because it changes the emotional meaning again. The golden retriever carrying your slipper may look guilty. But the body often tells a different story. Loose mouth. Satisfied trot. Soft eyes. No panic. This is not always the body of a criminal. Sometimes it is the body of an animal performing a job no one assigned today. A body saying, "I was built to take things gently and move with them. So I found something. So now I'm carrying it." That is not a moral failure. That is instinct meeting boredom. Instinct meeting domestic life. Instinct trying to become behavior somewhere. And when no one gives that instinct a better outlet, your belongings become the outlet. Not because they are sacred. Because they are available. And because they smell like the social world your dog lives inside. But food theft goes deeper in a different way. Because that is where dogs stop looking merely impulsive and start looking strategic. Studies have shown that dogs are more likely to take forbidden food when the human cannot see them well, whether because of darkness or blocked sight lines. That suggests the dog is not only attracted to the food. It is also adjusting behavior based on whether the person is likely to perceive the theft. Read that again. Not just, "I want food," but also, "Can you see me?" That changes everything. Because now the dog on the counter is not only driven. It is thinking socially. Tracking attention. Reading visibility. Using your perception as part of its decision. And suddenly the behavior stops looking dumb. It starts looking flexible. Clever, even. Which is hard to admit when the clever creature in question is currently eating your sandwich. But this is where self-doubt can twist in the other direction. Because once people realize the dog is smart, they start assuming the dog is calculating in a human way. Spiteful. Mocking. Sneaky in a moral sense. And that is another mistake. Dogs are not tiny villains. They are bodies and brains solving immediate emotional and practical problems in the environment they have. Comfort. Excitement. Novelty. Access. Arousal. Connection. That is the level most of this lives on. And now we get to the part almost nobody separates clearly enough. The difference between comfort stealing and dysregulated destruction. Because these are not the same state. A dog carrying your shirt into its bed and sleeping on it is often low arousal behavior. A dog exploding your pillow into white confetti across the room is usually something else. More activation. More frustration. More unmet energy. More internal pressure with nowhere to go. The body gives this away. Fast movements. Hard mouth. Repetitive tearing. Difficulty settling. A kind of restless commitment to the act. This is where behavior stops being about a symbolic object and starts being about state change. The dog is not interacting with the pillow as a belonging. The dog is using the act itself. Rip. Grab. Shake. Scatter. A sequence intense enough to discharge something. Understimulation. Stress. Frustration. Anxiety. Sometimes all of them mixed together. And that is why punishment often misses the point. Because punishment addresses the moment after the act. But the act was being driven by a body that needed somewhere for the pressure to go. There is another layer too. Novelty. Research suggests dogs often choose novel objects over familiar ones. That means your dog may ignore the toy it has seen all week and go straight for your shoe simply because the shoe is more interesting in that moment. Not because the shoe is magical. Because the shoe is newer to the mind. And once you combine novelty with scent, with your reaction, with access, with breed tendencies, with arousal, suddenly the object becomes irresistible. That is why people sometimes say, "My dog has 50 toys and still wants my stuff." Yes. Because your stuff is not competing with toys on one level. It is competing on 5. Smell, novelty, social value, reaction history, texture. And if the dog is young, add adolescence to the pile. Because adolescence changes everything. Young dogs often become more impulsive, more boundary testing, less consistent, and harder to read for a while. Research following dogs through adolescence found a pattern that looks uncomfortably familiar to anyone who has ever lived with a teenager: more conflict, weaker response to cues, more testing of limits, then gradual improvement later. So if your dog is in that 6-month to 2-year stretch, and suddenly every sock, dish towel, slipper, and paper towel roll is under threat, that does not automatically mean your training failed. It may mean your dog is in a developmental window where curiosity is louder than self-control, where novelty hits harder, where impulses arrive faster, where the brain is still learning how to stop. And weirdly, sometimes that knowledge is what keeps people from becoming colder. Because the worst thing about living with a thief dog is not always the mess. Sometimes it is the story you start telling yourself. My dog doesn't respect me. My dog is impossible. My dog only listens when it feels like it. Maybe we don't have the bond one thought we had. But a lot of stealing behavior is not proof of a broken bond. Sometimes it is the side effect of a bond mixed with arousal, curiosity, and a body that still doesn't know where to put itself. And here is the sad part. The more personal the object, the more personal the wound feels. A random sock is one thing. But when your dog takes the sweater you wore on a hard day, or tears up the pillow you sleep on, or grabs something of yours when you already feel exhausted, it can land like betrayal. Even when it isn't. Because human beings attach meaning to objects too. We do not just see fabric. We see memory, routine, care, possession, violation. So when your dog steals that thing, 2 nervous systems are now in the room. The dog's nervous system, trying to get something it needs. And yours, suddenly feeling crossed, disrespected, overwhelmed, maybe even hurt. And this is where everything escalates. You lunge. The dog runs. You corner it. The dog clamps down. You pry the thing away. The dog learns that having objects leads to conflict. Studies have found that repeatedly chasing dogs down or forcibly removing objects can increase guarding over time, while trading and teaching a positive drop response can reduce that conflict. Because now the issue is not just stealing. Now it is possession under threat. And once that pattern forms, the whole emotional tone changes. What began as play, or comfort, or curiosity, starts growing teeth. This is why the chase feels natural to people and so often backfires with dogs. It turns a charged moment into a relational battle. And the dog learns fast. Not ethics. Not manners. But this. When I get something valuable, humans become intense. So I should run sooner. Hold tighter. Trust less. That is how a small habit can turn into something heavier. Not overnight, but one nervous system clash at a time. And yet even here, there is a rare tenderness people miss. Because at the end of all this chaos, there is still that other dog. The one who takes your sweater and does nothing to it. The one who drags it gently into bed. Circles once. Lowers its body. Exhales. And falls asleep against the place where you still exist in scent. That scene matters. Because it reveals something almost painful about attachment. Dogs do not love us abstractly. They love us through the body. Through routines. Through footsteps. Through voice tone. Through eye contact. Through smell. Through the locations where we usually are. So when you are gone, even briefly, what they miss is not just you as an idea. They miss the sensory experience of your presence. And sometimes the closest available version of that is a shirt, or a blanket, or the corner of a pillow that smells like where your head usually rests. That is why these moments can feel so strangely heartbreaking once you understand them. Because what looked like theft was sometimes longing with pause, sometimes regulation with fur, sometimes love using the wrong object. And yes, there are limits. If a dog is repeatedly swallowing fabric, plastic, wood, or other objects, not just carrying or chewing them, that can move beyond normal stealing behavior and into something medically or behaviorally serious that needs a veterinarian. Especially if it is getting worse, hard to interrupt, or comes with vomiting, weight loss, low energy, or obvious distress. So none of this means every stealing behavior is sweet. Some of it is dangerous. Some of it is destructive. Some of it does need structure, management, enrichment, training, and real intervention. But understanding the motive matters. Because you cannot respond well to a behavior you keep mislabeling. If it is comfort, create safer comfort. If it is boredom, create better outlets. If it is play, stop rewarding the wrong game. If it is adolescence, survive it without poisoning the relationship. If it is arousal, work on the body, not just the object. If it is ingestion, take it seriously. That is the healing part. Not pretending the behavior is cute. Not romanticizing the mess. But finally seeing the dog clearly enough to answer the right need. And maybe that is what so many people are really hungry for when they ask, why does my dog keep stealing my things? Not just a training trick. A way to stop taking every stolen object as a personal rejection. A way to separate chaos from cruelty. Instinct from disrespect. Need from malice. Because a dog that steals is not always being bad. Sometimes it is overstimulated. Sometimes understimulated. Sometimes strategic. Sometimes adolescent. Sometimes playful. Sometimes anxious. And sometimes it just wants to be near you so badly that when it cannot have your body, it takes the nearest thing that still feels like your presence. And that is not a perfect kind of love. But it is love translated through a dog's nervous system. Messy. Physical. Misunderstood. A little destructive. And every now and then, unexpectedly tender.